Building a family can be a complicated, messy, lonely, and sometimes heartbreaking process. But you don't have to navigate this challenging journey alone.
Welcome to the All Paths podcast, where we support and celebrate all of the different ways there are to try to grow your family. We are your hosts, Kate and Emily from the nonprofit organization All Paths Family Building. And today we're talking with Rachel about her journey and her work in this space. Rachel, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Before we get into your family building journey in more detail, we'd love for you to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yeah, so I live in Colorado now, but I originally grew up in New Hampshire and went to college in Rhode Island. So I'm a New Englander, and I'm a yoga and meditation instructor. I'm a therapist and a coach. And most recently, I'm also a postpartum doula and an intended parent support coach.
Oh, that's wonderful. We'll definitely get into some of those hats that you're wearing later on in the episode. But for now, can you tell us a bit about your journey to starting a family? Where did it all begin?
Yeah, so let's see, where did it all begin? So my husband and I got together in our mid 30s, and I just assumed that we would be able to have a child. You know, our culture doesn't really talk about perimenopause and menopause and what the signs are. I was just clueless about that of what was happening in my body. So I thought I had lots of time. And I actually went to my primary care physician and told her that, you know, at some point we want to get pregnant. And she said, well, you better freeze some eggs then. And I just totally dismissed her and was so irritated and annoyed that she had said that and thought, like, what are you talking about? I've got plenty of time. Okay. So fast forward early 40s, we got married and we decided to start trying in 2016 and spent a year of upheaval of, you know, I was tracking my cycles, I was doing all the things, taking my temperature, and, you know, month after month of disappointment. And it was a real emotional roller coaster for myself and my husband, especially me, because I was really attached. You know, my biological clock was definitely ticking loud and clear. And so, yeah, we spent that year, and by the end of that year, I was done. I just couldn't go through another month of disappointment. And so it was a long process for me of letting that go, totally surrendering, trusting, okay, I guess it's not meant to be. I'd had all these dreams, you know, actual literal dreams of us having a child together. And so it was just a huge loss and letting go. We didn't have the funds at the time for IUI or IVF, so that door was closed and we were just ready to let it go. So that was 2016. We got married. And so that whole next year we were trying. And then a whole bunch of stuff happened in, especially my husband's family. Both of his grandparents passed away, and that meant a lot of upheaval for him. He was involved in their house and clearing it and all of this stuff. And then in 2020, his father got ill with esophageal cancer. Actually, that was 2019. And he passed away in 2020. So again, that was like kind of another huge, you know, family crisis, that it was actually really good that we didn't have a young child that we were trying to care for during that time. All this is in hindsight, right? So his father passed away in his mid 70s. It was just devastating for the whole family. But what came out of that was some inheritance for my husband, which we totally hadn't been expecting. And the other thing that came out of that was that my husband had shared with me that he had been holding on to this idea of surrogacy ever since we had given up on having a child. And I was totally floored, had no idea that he had even knew about it, or that it was just out of left field.
So it hadn't been a conversation at all, up
Not a
until that point?
conversation. Nope. It just was not, had never been brought up. I was totally opposed to it. You know, I felt like, this is my child. I want to carry the child. I don't want some other woman to carry my child. And I just was really against it. But little by little, the light started dawning on me that, well, this is our only and last chance. So if I want this dream to come true, I have to be open. And so there was this kind of another big letting go and like, okay, I'm not going to carry the child, but maybe this dream could come true. So we started looking into surrogacy, and we found that podcast, I Want to Put a Baby in You, which is actually how I found out about All Paths, listening to that podcast. So talked to Jennifer White there, and she asked us this question. She said, "How many embryos do you have?" And that was like a shocking question because we just hadn't even gone there. We didn't have any eggs, we didn't have any embryos. Like, we felt so far behind. And here we are, in our early 40s. And just, yeah, so that really kind of showed us how much we had to learn. Like, this is a huge field that if you don't know what you're getting into, there's a lot.
Mhm.
So we started to research and ended up actually deciding to do an international surrogacy. And we chose the country of Georgia for a couple of different reasons. One of which is that we both really love to travel. And my husband had always been interested in the country of Georgia. And so when we discovered that Georgia also does international surrogacy, it just seemed like a good fit. So we explored that, found an agency that I resonated with. Again, mind you, we're in COVID, so everything is just taking longer. That whole country was shut down, like no flights in and out. It just seemed like, okay, this is going to be a long journey. And we had lots of roadblocks along the way. There's just a lot of kind of bureaucracy and red tape that you have to jump through, including proving that you're married. My husband and I actually weren't legally married, so that was a whole journey. Um, yeah, so we didn't really know what we were getting into when we decided to do an international surrogacy. But once we had kind of committed, we were in it and willing to jump through the hoops because that's just what we had decided to do.
What was that process like?
Yeah, well, like I said, there were a lot of roadblocks.
Mhm.
So, there were cultural differences, there was time zone differences, there was language barriers. And yeah, just kind of jumping into this whole world that we had no idea what we were doing. One of the roadblocks that we ran into was it was sort of assumed that um, we wouldn't be able to use my eggs, partly because I was heavily into perimenopause at that point. My cycles were crazy. That didn't seem like it was going to be an option. So we thought that I have a much younger sister. I have a half sister, and we talked to her, and she was willing to donate eggs, and that just seemed like an amazing offering and gift because then the child would be related to me, and it was a really big, yeah, emotional investment in going through that with her. It took us about 6 months to kind of work through some preliminary problems to that possibility. And then when we finally did get her tested at the local fertility clinic, it turned out she wasn't a good candidate for egg donation. So that was another roadblock. And it just felt like, oh, now what? Maybe this isn't meant to be. Another challenge that we had along the way was that Russia invaded Ukraine, and Georgia is borders Russia and it's very close to Ukraine. And so that again felt like, okay, maybe this isn't meant to be. I don't want, our surrogate to be under the stress of a war in her country or nearby. And so again, that felt really scary, and moments of like, we can't do this. This isn't going to work. So we ended up choosing an egg donor from an egg donor bank in Georgia, and we decided to go to Georgia before we signed any paperwork or made any commitments. So we left in April of 2022. The war had started in February 2022, so we were like, okay, let's go just see what it feels like there. Is everybody really stressed out? What's going on there? And we actually had a really nice experience there. And so we decided to sign the paperwork, move forward. We met our egg donor, and yeah, we were like, okay, full steam ahead until the next block that happened, which was there were no surviving embryos from that cycle. So that was, I think, yeah, June of 2022. And I was ready to give up. Like, okay, this is a sign from the universe. It's not meant to happen. And then, oddly enough, our agency said, we feel so bad that you didn't get any embryos. We're willing to have you choose another egg donor and just go forward again, no extra charge. So we went through the process again. My mother and I chose a new donor. And that time we got two embryos. So again, not very many, and but there were two high quality embryos. The next obstacle that happened was that suddenly the agency was saying that it was going to be a long wait time before we could find a surrogate because of the war in Ukraine. All of the Ukrainian surrogacy programs and agencies had moved to Georgia. And so there was just a high demand for surrogates. And so again, I was ready to say, okay, enough, I give in. Like, I can't go through this anymore. And then we just got a surprise email one day, October 11th, saying, we have a match for you. Do you want to meet her? And so, of course, we met her and it felt like a good match. We also felt like we didn't have many options. We didn't have any options. She was our option. So we signed with her, and the embryo was transferred on October 18th of 2022. We had originally wanted to see if she would be willing to transfer both embryos and hope that one would take, or we were open to twins. She was actually a nurse and wasn't willing to do that. She just was aware of the, medical challenges with that. And so again, we had to let go of that. So that was the beginning of the pregnancy. And thankfully, it all went fairly well. There were some little things along the way that were scary. Challenges there were that she didn't speak English. So we always had a interpreter, someone from the agency supporting us to communicate with her. And I started to try to find ways to kind of bond with both her and the baby from far away. And so I want to kind of talk about that because that's become like a real passion and interest for me. Um, how do you bond with this child who, one, you're not carrying, but two, is like thousands of miles away from you? Um, so, yeah, so pregnancy progressed. I started doing a lot of research, kind of preparing myself to be a parent once, like probably that spring. Baby was due in July. And, just kind of like, yeah, what are we in for here? And how do we do this? And, so, one of the conversations that we were having with the surrogate in May, she shared that she had given birth to her own child 3 weeks early. So, that was a bit of a wake up call that our agency hadn't flagged beforehand, apparently. And so, we rebooked all of our tickets to go a couple weeks earlier than we had planned. And so, we arrived in Georgia in mid June, and about 30 hours ish, maybe less. After we got there, we got the call from the agency saying
Oh,
your
wow.
surrogate is in labor. And if you want to be there, you need to go to the hospital right now. We had planned on meeting her that morning, like meeting her in person for the first time. So, nope. The first time we met her was on the delivery table. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, that was quite the experience.
Yeah. Wow. It's so incredible that you did get there in time and without it's stressful enough and emotional enough without this like race, to the airport and changing flights and all that if you had not had at least that heads up about the potential for an earlier birth before. Well, I am so curious, what did you do to bond with this your baby from afar and this wonderful gestational carrier helping to build your family?
Yeah, so definitely sending a lot of messages like through WhatsApp. I just every couple days I would just send her a little message, maybe just a little message for the baby, or read a story. My husband and I read Goodnight Moon and sent that to her and asked her to play it for the baby. Especially in the beginning, sent her a lot of music and just things that were meaningful to us from our yogic tradition, that were soothing and peaceful. And she was always really open to that and seemed really appreciative. Um, so yeah, so the kind of the voice, we couldn't be there in person to touch, but we could touch with our voice. So we found lots of ways to do that. I also started knitting a blanket for him. And so, every time I like did another loop, it was just like this connection of like, I'm thinking about you and putting love into this blanket. I made a stuffed animal for him. A friend of mine and I made another stuffed animal for him. So there was just kind of this like tangible ways that I was like kind of knitting him into existence, like to make him real for me.
I love that. Yeah, that is
Yeah.
wonderful. And not to put myself in someone else's shoes, but I can imagine the gestational carrier feeling such a connection to you both as intended parents through those efforts, because not that there's one way to do this. I'm not saying that, but for me, those things you just described are so loving and tender that like it would make me feel so good about who I was helping to grow their family. That you
Yeah.
care that much that you wanted your baby in utero to hear your voice and that you were doing these things. I think that's so lovely. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing.
Yes, she and I both have birthdays in January. And so on her birthday, my husband and I like sang happy birthday to her and shared that. And then on my birthday, we went to a Georgian restaurant and I took a video of like Georgian food and sent that to her. So we just tried to find ways to connect and just like, yeah, connect over the miles. Um, One of the things that I have done recently is started to record some of the meditations that I was doing at that time for our child. So, imagining myself there with the surrogate and our baby and just sending him love, imagining like warm golden light around him and, sending all of my good wishes and hopes for him and her. And so, again, that was kind of like, another way to feel connected, even though I didn't have any power over what was happening thousands of miles away. It was just my little way of like using what power I did have, the power of prayer and intention and visualization instead of worry and anxiety and trying to control things I couldn't control.
Wonderful. So what was the birth and like the immediate postpartum like?
Yeah. So we rushed to the hospital in the middle of the night. And, it was all like so different. We'd never been to the hospital. Nobody spoke English. It was like dark and just completely unfamiliar. But we got there and I was brought into the labor and delivery room. And that was the first time we met our surrogate. And my husband actually wasn't allowed in the room. That's just part of Georgian culture. And so, yeah, I just went to her and I already felt so connected to her, even though we hadn't ever, met in person. And I like in sign language, like asked for a cool washcloth to put on her head because, she was sweating and they gave me this like scratchy paper towel, but I'm like, okay, that's the best we've got. And I put that on her forehead and just held her hand and like told her it was going to be okay. And I loved her, I'm crying and yeah, very soon after that, our baby was born. And, you know, I nobody could tell me like everything's fine. Everybody's just kind of going about their business and I hadn't been able to communicate a birth plan or any requests or anything. We thought we had, more time to like go to the hospital and tour and talk to the nurses, et cetera. That was all not how it happened. So they did the things I didn't want them to do, but it was just part of the culture. I don't know that they would have done it even if I had been able to make those requests. So, cut the cord and clean and weigh and measure. And, I just wanted to do that, skin to skin time. And that wasn't to be for, I don't know, maybe half hour until after he was wheeled into our room. So we stayed in the hospital for 3 days. That's another part of Georgian culture. And yeah, he stayed with us, and we just the nurses brought bottles and diapers and stuff, and they kind of showed us how to do the things. And yeah, so in a way, that was good support to have those 3 days. In a way, it was challenging because of the language barrier and not being in our own space, and we didn't have our own food, and it was really hot in there, and like there were things that made it like feel like a little bit like very glad to get out. Um, we had connected with a Georgian nanny before we had arrived. And so she came actually that first day that he was born, and she was a godsend. And she could communicate with the staff, and she brought us home cooked food and took care, held the baby while we got little cat naps. But one thing that was heartbreaking for me is that the surrogate didn't want to see us and didn't want to see the baby again. And again, that was not something that was in the plan, and not what I wanted. But with the help of this nanny, she communicated with her and brought this little bracelet that I had made for the surrogate that I'd wanted to give her at the birth. And so, we made the best of and honored what that surrogate felt comfortable doing.
Has that changed at all? Like, do you have contact with the gestational carrier now, or?
Yeah, just very minimal. We're Facebook friends. So, I see what she's up to, and she sees posts on birthdays. We will message each other, and on Christmas, and just, important moments. Yeah. So I've sent videos. And so she's not closed off to being in our lives, but it's just not something that is going to be a big part of her life. So, but yeah, she sends sweet little messages and prayers and things on those special occasions.
That's great. And it certainly seems like obviously you honored her emotional needs in that moment or in that phase of life, even if they unfortunately didn't align with yours.
Yeah.
But obviously she had done so much for you that really respected and honored her desires in that moment. So I think that is great. But I'm glad you have those lines of communication open now too,
Yeah.
for all of your sakes.
Yeah. Exactly.
So as you mentioned, you described them rightfully so as roadblocks, but as you were talking, I was just so mindful about how those different turns on the road to parenthood, they are so sometimes logistically challenging, they take time, and they're also often so emotional, and all those things are intertwined so much in those, particularly in those roadblock moments. So what were your biggest supports during that time, to get especially emotionally, to get through those
Mhm.
different times? And I'm right there with you. I think there were many times where you were thinking you were gonna be like, "This is it, let's call it," and obviously, I know you're glad you didn't, but I think that's very understandable that you were thinking and feeling that way at the time. So what helped you
Yeah.
navigate all of this?
Yeah. Well, definitely my husband. He was like the one each time that was like, I think we should just keep going. He maybe didn't have the huge emotional swings that I was having. So he wasn't maybe so impacted by the roadblocks. So each time he was just kind of that solid, like, let's just give it another chance. So that's the fact of the matter that I'm so grateful for. And then the other thing is just I have a solid yoga and meditation practice like every day, no matter what. I did it in the hospital after Remy was born. Like I do it every morning, and that just kind of like sets my nervous system for the day and helps me to, stay connected to something greater than myself, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, it gives me courage to do hard things and keep showing up. But there were lots of days, moments where I was like, I'm throwing in the towel. This is it. Yeah. So those two things for sure. I have a therapist, so she was really helpful. I wish that I had found one of your groups, your infertility group or your, trying to conceive group. That would have been really helpful. But I didn't know about you until way after.
That's the worst part about our job, I will say, is hearing people say, like, oh, I wish I'd known about you when. That was
Exactly.
a little
Yeah.
shot to the heart.
Yeah. Well, just to name, can I just talk about the groups that
Absolutely.
I've really benefited from? So the three that I've gone to are the donor conception group. So that's been really helpful just to share and hear other people's stories and know that like normalize the things and
Mm.
yeah, get support that way. The surrogacy group has been really helpful. So even after, and again, I didn't find any of these until after our child was born, but even now I go to that surrogacy group, and we, just hearing kind of where other people are at, and being able to share some of my experience. And then the one and no longer trying group, or one and no longer trying for another. Yeah. That's been a part of our journey too. So, as I had mentioned, we had two embryos, and had thought maybe we would have two, when we had one. It was a journey to, well, one, survive the first year of like, how do we parent a newborn? That's another group that you guys have that I wish I had had in time. And so, yeah, about a year or so after Remy was born, we decided that one was enough for us. And that group really helped me with that decision. I also got some outside support through internal family systems, to kind of talk through like this part of me that really wants to have another child, this other part that's exhausted and depleted. And oh, by the way, our son was born when my husband and I were 49. So we are way on the older end of the spectrum. So we decided to not have another. And yeah, so that was a whole journey to decide that, and then what to do with this remaining embryo. And through one of my postpartum support groups, somebody mentioned there's a whole realm of donating and adopting embryos, which I had no idea. So I joined one of those Facebook groups, and nothing came of that for a long time, mainly because we only had one, and it was in the country of Georgia. And whoever adopted that embryo would actually have to go to Georgia and do the IVF cycle there.
Oh,
And
wow. There's
so,
no way to
yeah,
transport it?
well, what I was told at the time, and I've hear conflicting reports on this, but any
Mm.
embryo that's created outside of the US, the FDA has really strict guidelines, and you
Okay.
can't transfer an embryo in the US that has been created outside of the US. Somebody might say, no, no, that's not true, but that's what I was told.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we had just again gave up on like, okay, I guess we're just going to have to let this embryo go, and just give it to the clinic and never know what happened to
Mm.
our child's little brother. One little detail about our egg donor is that she was actually Armenian. Armenia is right next to Georgia. And so I was scrolling through one of the Facebook groups one day after we'd even given up on donating, and somebody had posted, "I'm looking for an Armenian embryo," because she was
Oh, wow.
Armenian. And so I was like, "Hold up, that's me."
Wow. Oh, I just got chills. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
amazing.
So through a whole process, and legal and emotional, and we met many times over Zoom, and talked about what we wanted, and open, adoption, and staying in close contact. And so yeah, she and her husband went to Georgia in May of this past year. Successful transfer. Baby is due on my birthday in January.
Oh my
So
gosh. That's so
I know,
wonderful.
Oh my
fingers
gosh.
crossed and prayers, that
That's
Mhm.
that yeah.
wow.
And
Another wow.
along, I know, another
Another
wow.
wow
So
for me. I'm really at the top of my vocabulary game right now, but this just that's so lovely. And
Mhm.
yeah,
to see, I think, embryo donation, it's such a complex decision. It's such a personal decision, of course. And, um, but when all parties involved obviously are willing to be part of it and do all the due diligence that you need to do to make sure it's done well, when it has a lovely outcome, so far, and we'll continue to
so
send good
far.
thoughts to this family that
Thank you.
it's so great. It's so, so, so great. So thank you for sharing that. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So in a way, I get to kind of relive this like vicariously. She sends me the ultrasound scan videos, and I've offered to be her postpartum doula. So along the way, I decided to take the postpartum doula training, and I think she's going to be my first client. We're going to meet in a
Oh,
couple
that's really
weeks.
wonderful.
And it's a balance between, obviously this is more emotional and more tied to this child than I would be to a stranger's child, so I have to kind of pay attention to those,
Mhm.
inner promptings and find the right balance between
Yeah.
wanting to be a support to her and, not putting pressure on her. This is her child. She's going
Mm.
to make all the decisions she needs to make. So yeah, that will be an interesting line to walk to practice for
Yeah.
this first
Well,
time.
of course, I think it's very good that you're mindful of that and hopefully that you get support through navigating that because especially this is a relatively new field for you to be in but I
Yes.
think that's a really interesting, I could see there being like really a case study about this because it is such an interesting dynamic, but such a powerful one as well. So that's really great. So just of course, we want you to be gentle to yourself too and have the support you need going through this also, personally and professionally. So speaking of professional, it sounds like your own journey really has shifted your own professional paths. Can you share some about that?
Yeah. So I've been the yoga and meditation instructor for many years. That kind of morphed into doing coaching and therapy. I just meet one on one with yoga students, and it became much more than that. So yeah, I've been working with people for about 10 years in that way. And so that coaching piece of really just, yeah, supporting people through difficult experiences, this surrogacy journey has been one of the most difficult experiences of my life. And I did so much work to prepare myself and to, just learn about what I was getting into and then to support other parents who are going through it at the same time. So I came up with this title for myself. I call myself an intended parent support coach. And basically, I want to offer to other intended parents all the things that I didn't get or that I had to figure out for myself. So yeah, I feel like that's my next mission in life is to really turn my attention in that direction. Our son is a little over 2 now, so I'm coming a little bit up and out of the intensity of being new parents and have a little, he sleeps through the night now and like other miracles. So like I have my brain back. So yeah, I'm just trying to get the word out to other intended parents that like you need support, you deserve support. Your child that's coming to you deserves you to be supported so that you can show up in the best possible way for this child that you've worked so hard for and gone through so much for. One thing that I encounter is that intended parents are so superstitious and nervous and scared that, this isn't going to work. This is going to be another disappointment that they don't even allow themselves to really prepare for the child. So that's one piece that I want to support people through, one really honoring that because I get it. I was there. And let's just assume everything's going to go okay. How do you want to meet that child for the first time? What kind of, mental, emotional, physical space do you want to be in for those first, magical weeks? How to really best prepare to receive this little one. So that's my mission for this next part of my career is to support parents and support the babies that are coming through in this incredible, challenging way.
Yeah, that's great. And also preparing for like you mentioned how magical it is, which it is, but also as you experienced, also preparing for the fact that new parenthood is also extremely difficult and being
Not
that,
always magical.
yeah, it's like
Yeah,
I'm always protective of people to prepare them for the non-magical since so many other people are saying enjoy every moment and I'm like
And
why do we say this to parents? I'm like, did you enjoy every moment? I don't
mhm.
think so. Like,
There's so much pressure in this community specifically, though, to
yes,
feel that
absolutely.
like you're not allowed
Yeah,
to complain or you're not
no,
allowed to not like every moment because you did try so hard
yeah,
to,
yeah,
get to this point where you finally have a baby in your arms and then you're like,
right. Now what?
well,
I
Yeah,
don't
am I
love
allowed to
every
complain?
moment. Yeah, yes. Well,
yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
100%.
And in
200%.
our culture, we don't have the support. So
Mm-mm.
that's a huge reason why people don't enjoy it because there's not the support that human beings are meant to have. If we were in a village, it would be a whole different story. So that's a big piece that I want to support people with is how do you create your village.
Mhm.
And how do you create that postpartum plan? Even though you're not giving birth, you still need a postpartum plan. And I had a beautiful postpartum doula who helped us with that. So she, held our hand and walked us through that. Even though she was not there in Georgia, she was back here in Colorado, but she was there for us. So that's why I did that postpartum doula training, and want to provide that for others.
That's great. And as you mentioned how we all understand that desire to kind of like protect your heart when you've gone through already so much trauma and disappointment in many cases. And hope feels like your worst and best friend,
Yeah.
or enemy and friend. But I do think in some ways it's like if the worst thing happens, it's going to be the worst thing no matter what. So it's almost like you can't even really protect yourself from the bad, but you can find ways to let the light in a little bit and let the hope in a way that feels like safe. And I love that you're helping people to do that and find those
Yeah.
ways of doing that. Again,
Mm.
it's like both can be there. You can
Exactly.
have optimism and protect your heart too.
Yeah. Not enjoying it isn't going to make it hurt less.
Right,
And I say that
right.
as the most pessimistic person that Kate has ever met. Her continual frustration.
No, no.
Yeah, it's not going to hurt less
Well,
if you don't enjoy any minute of it.
I love that you use the word hope, because the name that we chose for our child is Remiel, and that is the archangel of hope. And my website is all the theme is about birds, and it's based off the Emily Dickinson poem, Hope is a thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And so that was, kind of one of my themes, is like, there were times I lost hope. Absolutely. I gave up. I'm done. And then like this little bird kept singing somewhere. And, I kept kind of coming back onto the path. And so, yeah, we call Remy our little bird, and he's our winged one, and he's an archangel of hope.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Your question about like, you know, advice I'd give to someone just starting to grow their family is like
I love someone who's listened to the show. We don't even have
finding
to
this
ask the question.
very fine line between being willing to surrender and let go and give up and turn over everything and let go of timing and let go of expectations, and not giving up, not giving up hope, being willing to kind of flow through like a river around obstacles, and see where you're going to end up, and trusting that wherever you end up is somehow where you're supposed to end up, even though you have no idea what that's going to be like, and even though many points along the journey does not feel like this is not how it's supposed to be. So yeah, it's really asking the impossible of people to go through this, to like have hope and also give up hope at the same time.
It's a
Yeah,
balancing act.
but
Yeah.
that's well said.
Yeah, and I love how you incorporated that philosophy, that Emily Dickinson poem, and that imagery throughout your website, which we will put the link to in our show notes in case anybody is looking to get in touch. So now that you've been through this whole process, both as an intended parent, but now also in this kind of unique role as a coach for other intended parents and a postpartum doula, and working with a family that you donated your embryo to, how would you recommend someone show up for a friend or a family member who is struggling to build their family?
Yeah. Well, there's a million ways and there's no one right way. And so, one of the things that I do with my child when he's having big feelings is I just listen and just let him know he's not alone in whatever he's going through. So I don't try to fix it. I don't try to distract him with a cookie. He's just allowed to have his feelings. So that's one piece that, I can suggest, is just listen and let people have their feelings without trying to fix it, or, sugarcoat it or silver lining it, or to just
Mm.
be there with them. And another piece is to show up, whether it's showing up at an appointment or going to a support group, or, you know, going to a yoga class with somebody, like whatever hand holding somebody needs, to just walk alongside them so they know they're not going through it alone, because that's what we all feel like. Like, I'm the only one doing this. I'm the only one going through this. And so if you can, whatever ways, find ways to walk alongside. That would be my recommendation.
I love that. And the instinct to fix or to try to fix is so strong, but
Yeah.
trying to tamp that down for a little while and just be in that space with
Mm-hmm.
someone is so helpful, so important.
Exactly. And then, just giving the message over and over again that, you love and support them no matter what happens. If a child is at the end of this journey or not, like, the love and support is unconditional.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, it's been really lovely getting to know more about your own journey and your professional goals in this space. It's really, I'm excited to kind of see what happens next. Is there anything that we haven't asked about that you would want to share?
Um, well, I guess just one final piece is, I was kind of talking about one of my passions is supporting intended parents to bond with their unborn child. And another piece that I feel like is so important because it went so poorly for us is that moment of transfer between the carrier and the intended parents. It just, everything we wanted didn't happen in that moment. So I guess it's my, like, again, life's mission or wish to be able to support that moment, in person ideally, but can be from afar as well, but just to really be there to facilitate that transition of the child from one mother to the next mother, or father or parents. So yeah, so that's my hope and my mission. And of course, there have been lots of obstacles along the way to becoming this intended parent support coach. So I don't know where it's gonna end up. So I'm walking this fine line again of, like, hope and intention and purpose and mission. And, well, I have to turn it over and see what the universe wants. So I'm in that space with this new baby as well.
That's wonderful. And we look forward to seeing what comes next for you as well. And for any intended parents who might be listening, we will definitely link your blog post on bonding with your unborn baby in the show notes as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this has been really fun.
We hope you'll join us next time for more family building stories and resources. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts to make sure you never miss an episode. And follow us on social media at allpathsfb, or visit our website, allpathsfb.org, for more information about our work. All Paths Family Building is so grateful to the members of our circle of support who are vital to our ability to provide emotional support, education, and advocacy that is open to anyone struggling to grow their families. Today, we want to thank our rainbow sponsor, Granada Bio. Thank you for joining us for this episode. Please help spread the word so that anyone who is struggling to grow their family can join the conversation. It's an honor to walk with you on your family building journey.